Think carefully about this question because it quietly controls your entire social life. Why do some people walk into a room and are instantly respected, while others are constantly ignored, talked over, or taken lightly, no matter how intelligent or kind they are? Machiavelli would say this is not luck, personality, or fate. It is structure. Disrespect does not happen randomly, it is allowed. And once it is allowed even once, it becomes a habit for others and a prison for you. The most dangerous mistake people make is believing respect comes from being good, patient, or understanding. In reality, respect comes from consequences. The world does not respond to intentions, it responds to outcomes. You can be the most loyal, honest, and hardworking person in the room, but if people learn that crossing you costs nothing, they will cross you without hesitation. Machiavelli understood human nature clearly. People test boundaries not because they are evil, but because they are curious. They are curious. And when they discover there is no price to pay, they push further. Disrespect often begins quietly. It starts with small interruptions, subtle jokes at your expense, delayed replies, dismissive tones, or decisions made without consulting you. Most people ignore these moments thinking they are insignificant. But Machiavelli would warn you that small signs reveal large truths. When you tolerate minor disrespect, you train others to deliver major disrespect later. Silence in these moments is not maturity. It is permission. Permission. The single action that changes everything is not confrontation, aggression, or emotional outbursts. It is withdrawal of access. The moment someone disrespects you and you calmly reduce their access to your time, attention, energy, and availability, the power dynamic shifts instantly. No argument, no explanation, no warning, just distance. This is the move that forces people to reassess your value because humans only value what they fear losing. Machiavelli believed that people are more loyal to necessity than to affection. If someone needs you emotionally, socially, or strategically, and suddenly that support disappears, confusion turns into respect. When you remove yourself without drama, the other person is left alone with one powerful question. What did I lose? That question creates self-reflection far more effectively than any speech ever could. One of the most common causes of disrespect is over-explaining. The more you justify yourself, the more you imply that your position requires approval. Powerful people state they do not plead. They move, they do not negotiate their worth. When someone disrespects you and you rush to explain your feelings, intentions, or sacrifices, you place yourself beneath them in the hierarchy. Machiavelli warned against this weakness because explanation hands control to the listener. Another silent destroyer of respect is emotional reactivity. The person who angers you controls you. The person who can provoke a reaction owns your state of mind. When you respond emotionally to disrespect, you reveal vulnerability. And vulnerability, when unprotected by power, invites further attacks. Calm withdrawal, however, creates uncertainty, and uncertainty makes people cautious. You must understand this clearly. People do not respect kindness without strength. Kindness without boundaries is interpreted as fear. Machiavelli never advised cruelty for its own sake, but he understood that firmness must always stand behind softness. If people believe you will always remain accessible, forgiving, and available regardless of how they treat you, they will exploit that certainty. The strongest message you can ever send is not spoken. It is behavioral. When someone disrespects you and suddenly notices that you are no longer as responsive, no longer eager, no longer present, their perception shifts. Your absence becomes louder than any confrontation. This is because attention is currency and you just raised your price. Powerful individuals are selective with their energy. They do not chase validation. They do not argue for dignity. They simply remove themselves from situations where respect is lacking. Over time, this conditions others to approach them carefully. The world adapts to strength far faster than it listens to complaints. Machiavelli understood that fear of loss is stronger than desire for gain. When people realize they can lose access to you, they become attentive. They become polite. They become respectful, not because you demanded it, but because you enforced it. It is important to note that this method must be used once and decisively. If you withdraw access and then return too easily, you lose credibility. Power comes from consistency. When people learn that disrespect equals distance, they stop testing. But if they learn that distance is temporary and negotiable, the cycle restarts. Respect is not created by dominance alone. It is created by predictability of consequences. The moment people know exactly what happens when a boundary is crossed, behavior changes. Machiavelli emphasized that mercy without limits breeds contempt, while discipline without emotion builds authority. Another crucial rule is silence. Silence after disrespect is not weakness when it is paired with action. Silence becomes powerful when it is backed by absence. Talking less, reacting less, explaining less while doing more is a strategy used by those who understand influence. You must also accept a hard truth. Some people will never respect you no matter what you do. Machiavelli would advise removing such people completely. Keeping them around sends a message to everyone else that disrespect is survivable. Your environment trains your reputation. Once you apply this rule correctly, something interesting happens. People begin to watch how they speak to you. They choose their words more carefully. They hesitate before crossing lines. Not because you changed your personality, but because you changed the cost of access. Respect is not about being feared as a tyrant. It is about being known as someone whose presence is valuable and whose absence is costly. This balance is the essence of Machiavellian power. In the end, remember this. You teach people how to treat you not by what you say, but by what you tolerate. The world does not punish disrespect automatically. You must design the system. Do it once, do it calmly, and do it without explanation. When you remove access instead of arguing, people learn faster than you expect. Respect is never requested. It is enforced quietly. And once enforced properly, it rarely needs to be enforced again. Understand this deeply. The moment you decide to protect your self-respect, you will lose some people. Machiavelli would say, this loss is not a tragedy. It is proof that the system is working. Those who benefited from your silence, patience, and emotional labor will feel uncomfortable the moment you stop offering it freely. They may accuse you of changing, becoming cold, arrogant, or distant. These accusations are confessions. They reveal who is profiting from your lack of boundaries. Most people fear being disliked more than being disrespected, and that fear keeps them trapped. They tolerate jokes that sting, commands disguised as requests, and dismissive behavior because they want to maintain harmony. But Machiavelli understood that harmony without hierarchy always collapses. Someone is always on top, and if it is not you, it will be someone who has fewer morals but stronger control. Disrespect thrives where clarity is missing. When people do not know what happens if they cross you, they experiment. But when your response is consistent and unemotional, curiosity dies. There is nothing to explore anymore. The boundary becomes solid. The rule becomes known. One of the strongest forms of power is being misunderstood and unbothered by it. When you stop explaining yourself, people fill the silence with assumptions. Let them. Confusion is uncomfortable and discomfort forces adaptation. When you remain calm while others are unsure, you control the psychological terrain. Another truth Machiavelli would insist on is this: familiarity breeds contempt. The more accessible you are, the more ordinary you become. This does not mean isolation, but it does mean selectivity. Not everyone deserves your inner circle, your humor, your vulnerability, or your time. When you give these things too easily, you dilute their value. Watch how powerful individuals behave. They are not loud. They are not reactive. They do not rush to reply. They do not chase closure. Their restraint creates gravity. People lean in, not because they are mysterious by accident, but because they are disciplined by choice. When someone disrespects you and you instantly disengage, you introduce uncertainty. Humans fear uncertainty more than confrontation. A fight gives closure. Distance does not. Distance leaves the mind searching, replaying, analyzing. That mental occupation is where respect is rebuilt. It is also important to understand that respect gained through fear alone is unstable. Machiavelli never promoted reckless cruelty. He promoted calculated control. Your goal is not to intimidate everyone, but to establish that you are not harmless. There is a difference between being peaceful and being weak. Peaceful people can become dangerous when crossed. Weak people cannot. The mistake many make is waiting for repeated disrespect before acting. By then, the pattern is established. The correction becomes harder. The first violation is always the most important moment. How you respond teaches people what to expect forever. Do not announce your standards. Live them. Announcements invite challenges. Actions end them. When you quietly remove yourself, reduce communication, and shift your energy elsewhere, you demonstrate self-respect without asking for permission. Over time, this creates reputation. People speak differently about those who do not tolerate disrespect. Even when you are not present, your absence is felt. This is real influence. Not dominance through noise, but authority through consistency. Some will try to pull you back with apologies, excuses, or sudden kindness. Observe carefully. True respect changes behavior permanently, not temporarily. Not temporarily. Machiavelli warned against trusting emotional gestures without structural change. Watch what they do when you are calm, not what they say when they are afraid of losing you. The discipline required for this rule is emotional restraint. Your ego will want to react. Your pride will want the last word. But power does not seek the last word. It seeks the final position. Silence combined with action always wins over speech combined with emotion. Eventually, you will notice something shift. Conversations change. Tone changes. Invitations change. People begin to ask instead of assume. They listen more closely. This is not because you demanded respect, but because you made disrespect expensive. In the end, Machiavelli's lesson is brutally simple. People do not rise to your expectations. They sink to the level you tolerate. If you tolerate nothing, you receive nothing less. Do this once. Do it correctly, and you will never need to do it loudly again. There is another layer most people never understand. Respect is not emotional. It is positional. People do not ask themselves whether they like you before deciding how to treat you. They ask where you stand. Are you someone who can be ignored without consequence, or someone whose reaction reshapes the environment? Once that position is established, emotion becomes irrelevant. This is why trying to be liked first is a losing strategy. Likability without leverage leads to invisibility. Machiavelli observed that humans instinctively submit to structure. Where structure is missing, chaos fills the space. If you do not define how others may treat you, they will define it for you, usually in ways that benefit them. Disrespect is simply the visible symptom of missing structure. Many people believe strength requires loudness, dominance, or confrontation. In reality, those are often signs of insecurity. True strength is quiet because it does not need validation. When someone disrespects you and you do nothing publicly but everything privately, you create an imbalance they cannot resolve. They expected noise. They received silence. They expected engagement. They received distance. This breaks patterns and forces recalculation. People are uncomfortable when access is reduced without explanation. Their mind searches for meaning. Was it something I said? Did I misjudge them? Did I go too far? That internal questioning is the beginning of respect. You did not demand it. You triggered it. Machiavelli warned against emotional generosity without limits. When you give endlessly, people stop seeing it as generosity and start seeing it as obligation. They feel entitled to your patience, your forgiveness, your presence. Entitlement is the foundation of disrespect. The moment you remove what they feel entitled to, reality hits. You must also understand timing. Delayed responses are powerful. Immediate responses communicate need. And when you respond instantly, you signal availability. When you respond deliberately, you signal control. Powerful people choose when to engage. That choice alone changes how others behave around them. There will be moments when people test you after you apply this rule. They will push subtly, pretending nothing has changed. Do not explain. Do not confront. Maintain the shift. Consistency is what converts doubt into belief. Once belief is formed, the testing stops. Some people will disappear. Let them. Machiavelli would say that those who leave when respect is required were never allies, only beneficiaries. Keeping them would cost you authority with everyone else. Another truth is that respect often arrives disguised as distance. When people stop joking too freely, stop crossing lines, and stop assuming access, it may feel colder at first. But that coldness is clarity. Warmth without control leads to chaos. Control creates the conditions where real respect can exist. Understand this as well. You cannot fake this rule. If you withdraw access but remain emotionally attached, people sense it. Power requires internal alignment. You must genuinely be willing to walk away from those who disrespect you. Machiavelli believed that leverage only exists when you are prepared to use it. The moment you are no longer afraid of losing people, you stop losing yourself. That inner shift changes posture, tone, pace, and presence. People feel it before they can explain it. Respect begins there. In social hierarchies, people unconsciously rank those around them. They observe who reacts, who tolerates, who withdraws, and who controls space. When you stop reacting and start controlling access, your rank rises without a single word spoken. This is why arguments rarely restore respect. Arguments place both parties on the same level. Distance creates hierarchy. When you disengage calmly, you elevate yourself above the conflict. Others notice. Eventually, your name carries weight even when you are absent. People think twice before crossing you. Not because you are aggressive, but because you are decisive. Decisiveness is intimidating to those who rely on chaos. Machiavelli's darkest truth is this: people do not respect morals. They respect power aligned with discipline. When discipline shapes your behavior, power follows naturally. You are not meant to be cruel. You are meant to be unreachable by disrespect. Once people learn that access to you is conditional, behavior improves automatically. This is not manipulation. It is self-governance, and self-governance always commands respect. Do this once, enforce it silently. Maintain it consistently, and you will notice something unmistakable. People no longer test you, they adjust to you. That is when you know the rule is working. Once you truly understand this principle, you realize that the world responds not to words, but to presence. People measure influence in the space you occupy, the attention you allow, the patience you give. Disrespect is simply the signal that your space has been devalued. Machiavelli would say that respect is a resource, and like any resource, it must be rationed. If you give it freely, it loses value. If you demand it silently, it multiplies. The people who have disrespected you until now were testing. Testing is not random, it is intentional. They are trying to find the limits of your tolerance, the depth of your ego, the boundaries of your patience. If those limits are invisible or flexible, they push relentlessly. Only by defining these limits once, clearly, silently, can you halt the testing. That is the moment power shifts and respect begins to solidify. You must understand the subtlety of influence. People are not only watching your actions, they are anticipating them. They look for patterns, predict reactions, measure consistency. When you behave unpredictably in small matters, you invite chaos. But when you are predictable in boundaries and reactions, when disrespect is always met with calibrated distance, people feel compelled to adjust, sometimes even unconsciously. They do not even realize that your power has grown, only that the cost of crossing you has increased. This is why over-explaining or defending yourself is fatal. Words without leverage are empty. When someone disrespects you and you respond with arguments or justifications, you signal that your authority is negotiable. Machiavelli understood that the perception of inviolability is stronger than inviolability itself. People respect what cannot be challenged easily, not what can be debated endlessly. Power is not about aggression. Power is about control of resources, your time, your energy, your attention, your presence. Disrespect is the theft of those resources. When you act decisively to reclaim them, the thief learns the cost immediately. Withdrawal is far more effective than confrontation because confrontation engages ego. Ego invites retaliation. Withdrawal creates reflection. Reflection breeds respect. There is another layer most people never perceive. Scarcity of attention is the ultimate currency. People will not value what is infinite, but they will treasure what is limited. By limiting access, by reducing the moments in which others can test you, you turn yourself into a resource worth guarding. That is why Machiavelli repeatedly emphasized the strategic use of absence. Absence is not avoidance, it is leverage. It is the silent signal that respect has a price. You must accept the uncomfortable truth. Not everyone will remain in your life. When respect becomes non-negotiable, some will leave. This is not loss, it is filtration. Those who remain learn boundaries. Those who depart reveal themselves as opportunists. Both outcomes strengthen your position. Machiavelli taught that true allies are revealed not in moments of comfort, but in moments when you enforce limits. Observe closely how powerful individuals operate. They do not react impulsively. They do not demand loyalty verbally. Their presence communicates expectation. Their absence communicates consequence. They are calm, unwavering, disciplined, and patient. They are not afraid of temporary discomfort. They are not moved by fleeting anger. They are aligned with long-term strategy. Their power is quiet, steady, and inevitable. Consider this. Humans instinctively fear loss more than they desire gain. This principle is the lever of Machiavelli influence. When you withdraw your time, your attention, or your energy in response to disrespect, you trigger fear of loss. That fear is immediate. It forces recalibration. People will bend their behavior to avoid losing what they have come to value. This is the essence of leverage. Disrespect is contagious if left unchecked. It spreads like wildfire because humans mirror social hierarchies unconsciously. The moment one person realizes they can overstep without consequence, others follow. That is why the first action you take, the first boundary you enforce, is the most critical. Delay and you permit a culture of disrespect to take root. Your reaction must be deliberate. Immediate withdrawal, calm silence, deliberate scarcity, these are the signals that recalibrate behavior. There is no need for confrontation, explanation, or drama. Those are tools for the weak. The powerful demonstrate authority by aligning action with principle. The moment your behavior changes, perception changes. People begin to treat you differently, almost instinctively. Even the smallest gestures matter. A delayed response to a message, a careful tone, a selective presence. These seemingly minor acts compound into a reputation for inviolability. Reputation, once established, protects you more effectively than confrontation ever could. Machiavelli understood that perception shapes reality. When people perceive strength, they behave differently. When they perceive weakness, they exploit it. You must also recognize the psychological dimension. Disrespect triggers emotional responses in you. Anger, frustration, desire for validation. If you act on these impulses, you reinforce the cycle of disrespect. The weak react. The strong observe. They convert emotion into strategy. They recognize that respect cannot be demanded. It can only be designed. Once this principle is internalized, everything changes. People begin to anticipate consequences before acting. They measure their words, temper their actions, and calculate the cost of every interaction. You no longer need to assert authority. Authority asserts itself through consistent behavior, disciplined boundaries, and strategic withdrawal. Finally, understand that this is a lifelong strategy. Respect is not a one-time acquisition, it is continuously maintained. Machiavelli emphasized that the world never forgets weakness, but it remembers strength indefinitely. Once you act decisively to reclaim your boundaries, the memory of that moment endures. People may test again, but the precedent exists. You have already demonstrated what happens when disrespect occurs. The lesson is learned. Do this once decisively, without words, without drama. Withdraw. Reduce access. Guard your time. Observe. The world will adapt. Respect will be restored. You will no longer be overlooked. You will no longer be dismissed. You will no longer be underestimated.